You know, I usually say things that get repeated. I say things repetitiously, but one of the things I say quite often is if you're going to steal, steal from the best. Let's talk about what that means. Hi, my name's Eagle. I'm the publisher and the line editor at No Earth Comics, and today we're going to talk about how a experienced artist can become a more effective artist. So one of the things that I've been quoted as saying a number of times is, if you're going to steal, steal from the best. And people sometimes misinterpret that, and sometimes they want to misinterpret that. The first thing we need to establish is that there really are no new ideas. There's no original ideas. And I've talked about this in other videos, but one of the things that you have to understand is that only your execution of an idea makes it original. Because everything that you do is repetitious. Everything that you do is based on what you have seen before, what you have read, what you have watched, what you have experienced, and it's filtered through your own life experiences. So there's really nothing new under the sun, but there's original ways of executing. So, first we need to talk about the difference between plagiarism and inspiration. Okay, if you are flat out copying something, wait, let me back up. Let me preface all this by saying that this video is aimed at artists. Okay, it's aimed at a moderate to an experienced artist. It is not aimed at beginning artists. In fact, if you're a beginning artist and you use some of the stuff that I talk about in this video, it's actually going to hamper you, not help you. Because in order to be a good artist, you need to have a level of competence. You need to have a level of expertise. You need to have an understanding of the basics. If you don't understand anatomy, if you don't understand perspective, if you don't understand composition, if you don't understand how to use a color palette properly, if you don't understand this stuff and know it, and I don't just mean having read it in a book, I mean practice it, I mean understand how to make use of it in your day-to-day artwork, then this video is actually going to hurt you. Stop watching. I hate saying that, but this is not for you. This is for the moderate to the experienced artist. And this is where we start talking about how to achieve the speed and the effectiveness needed to be a good comic book artist. You see, if you are doing a monthly book, this means that you have 22 pages and a cover to turn out every month. That's 23 pages. This means that you're basically turning out a page a day. Assuming that you take some time off to spend with your people, assuming that you take some time off to unwind, you're still talking about a page a day, which means that on an average script, this breaks down to 4 to 8 panels a day. It's a lot of work. And more than a lot of work, it's a lot of places that you need to start figuring out more effective ways to do things. So, what we're going to be talking about today is how to do things more effectively. Okay, and some of this is going to offend the sensibilities of some people who have a purist idea of art. And to those people I say, we're not talking cut off your ear artwork here. We are talking turning out a product. And that's what comic books are, is a product. And we're talking about turning it out in an effective and original way. So, first thing is that there's this old joke. One source is plagiarism, 3 sources is research. And it applies more to writing than to artwork, but it also applies to artwork if you take the core of it and examine it. there are only so many different ways to draw Batman. Okay, that there's only so many different ways to draw Spider-Man. When you are drawing a new Batman or a new Spider-Man, you are not doing plagiarism unless you are specifically copying a specific artist's version. You're doing research. You have taken a picture in your mind of what you think Batman looks like, and you are creating that on the page. And there may be some Neil Adams mixed in. There may be some Mike Grell mixed in. There might be all these different artists mixed in to your version of Batman. And this is what the saying means. One source plagiarism, three sources research. The poses are the same way. If you are taking one pose and you stole it from somewhere, you stole it from a specific artist, that's plagiarism. Okay? If you are doing it as an homage, that's different, because comic books are weird. Okay? Make no mistake about it, they're weird. If you take a classic Frank Miller Batman picture and you do it in your style, but it's the same pose, and then at the bottom when you sign it, you put after Miller, it's no longer plagiarism, it's now an homage. It's now you paying tribute to one of the greats of the industry. And some people get their knickers in a wad over this. And to them I say, deal with it, grow up. This is the way the industry works. This is the way fandom works. And if you think that comic book artists are not fan geeks, you haven't been paying attention. Let me show you something. Let me give you a quote real quick. The great Wally Wood, and if you don't know who Wally Wood is, hit Google. Okay, but the great Wally Wood, we're going to mention Wally Wood twice in this video. This is the first time. The great Wally Wood once said, never draw what you can swipe. Never swipe what you can trace. Never trace what you can photocopy and paste up. And what he was referring to was that effectiveness, that ability to turn out a comic book page on a regular basis so you can get paid. But let's take a look at this. Out of camera range up there. Well, you know what? Screw out of camera range. Let's take a look here real quick. Okay. You see all those 3-ring binders on the top shelf up there? That is my swipe files. And you're going, well, what's a swipe file, Eagle? Well, I'm going to tell you what a swipe file is. A swipe file is I mentioned swipes a moment ago when I was talking about the Wally Wood quote. A swipe file, I have just messed up my camera mount, but that's okay. We're going to make this work. So a swipe file is a collection of pictures There we go. We're still off center. That'll teach me to change a camera angle in the middle of a video, won't it? Okay, so swipe file is a collection of pictures, and in my case, I've got all these 3-ring binders, and these 3-ring binders I have taken and I have basically made a huge collection of clippings. And me being CDO, that's the same thing as OCD, but the letters are in the correct alphabetical order. So me being CDO, I have cut and pasted these pictures into 3-ring binders. At a certain point in time, I scan them and I go ahead and print them out so that they fit better in here. But so I've got all of these pictures of various characters, and this is my DC1 book. And so this is all DC in here. And so this is my swipe file. And what a swipe is not something that you copy off of. Okay? You don't copy off of a swipe file. You use the swipe file as your inspiration. You use the swipe file to say, okay, this is how this artist solved this problem. This is how this artist achieved this dynamic posing. This is how this artist achieved the greatness that I am trying to emulate. And you can't go through and make your comic career copying other people's poses, unless your name is Greg Lands. Google Greg Land swipes, because I'm not going to go in any farther into that. But so what you're doing is you're looking for a catalog of references. And by the way, if you are not using references in your drawings, then you're doing two things. Number one, you're slowing yourself down, because taking everything out of your head means that you do a lot more correcting, you do a lot more mistakes. And number two, you are locking yourself into a particular mindset, and you need to expand that. So what Wally Wood said was, never draw what you can swipe. And this was back in the days when there was a lot more plagiarism going on within comics. But it's still applicable today, because I very seldom draw a panel without taking some idea of what I want to achieve with that panel. And a lot of times that panel winds up with me remembering something specific that I saw in another panel somewhere and going and taking a look at it. Now, I'm not going to use it as I'm not going to copy it, and I'm not even going to copy all of the elements from it. What I'm going to do is look at that and look at how this artist solved that problem. And we're going to go from there. I told you I was going to mention Wally Wood twice in this video, and the second thing that Wally Wood did was he did a poster that has hung in many a comic artist studio called 24 Panels That Always Work. Sometimes it's 22 Panels That Always Work, but it's very important that you go and Google and find a copy of this poster. Because this poster is panel composition. You can't take any of those panels and just drop them into your comic book. But what you can do is take that panel composition and redraw it and make it work for your comic. And the important thing to remember about these compositions that he's showing is that they save you time. They save you energy, because a lot of them are silhouettes. A lot of them are no background close-up shots. A lot of them are things that set a mood, and they give you an idea of how to do your panels, and they speed up your entire process. And that's what this is all about. Make no mistake about it. That's what this is about, is speeding up your process, because you've already mastered the basics. What you're trying to do now is get the speed down, because that speed is money. That speed is your precious time. And this is how you achieve it. So, I actually made notes for this one because there's a lot that I want to cover. Okay, so that's the idea behind a swipe file. That's the idea behind how to take what other people have done and avoid reinventing the wheel in order to do a page. There's a number of times when you're going to wind up using photo references. You're going to wind up using a lot of different references for a single picture, and that's standard art practice. What I'm talking about is not standard reference. What I'm talking about is using the problem solving, because every single panel is a problem. Every single panel is something that you have to address, that you have to worry about how it's going to work and why it's going to work. And when you're doing the panels, you're having to pay attention to the page flow, you're having to pay attention to the eye track, you're having to pay attention to all of this, but the problems have been solved. When you look at the genius behind the 22 panels that always work poster, it shows you 22 different ways to solve this set of problems. And it speeds up your process. It makes what you do go faster. It also starts teaching you the difference between being a pinup artist, in which case the background is just as important as the foreground, and being a comic book sequential artist, in which case oftentimes the background is a distraction to the panel. You want a lot of background on an establishing shot. When you're doing a close-up, the background becomes far less important. So this is the first part of what I'm talking about when I say, if you're going to steal, steal from the best. The next thing that this comes down to is your visual style. And your visual style develops over time, and it's something that comes naturally. You can't simply say, I'm going to develop this style, although some people do. We've got an artist who is a big Mobius fan, and so he has developed a Mobius style. His style is not Mobius, but it's obviously got a Mobius inspiration to it. He's developed his own style, and I watched a couple of his work in progress videos, and I've come to hate him because he doesn't use a pencil. He goes straight into pen and turns out this beautiful line work. But what he's done is not become a Xerox machine of Mobius. He has his own style, but it has a Mobius inspiration. And there's a lot of different artists out there that have inspiration from different people. Artists that I see inspiring other artists all the time include John Byrne, they include Gene Colan, they include Mike Grell, they include Frank Miller. These artists have developed their own distinctive styles, but you can see it show up in other people's work, and that's not a bad thing. For War Mage, I used Richard Corbin. I was working in a brand new medium. I'd never done 3D art before, and I had never done digital art before. And I grew up on Heavy Metal magazine, and one of the things that always struck me was Richard Corbin's art style. So I used that as a basis for some of the look that I wanted to get. And I used it in a way that there's a familiarity to it. Nobody's going to pick it up and go, oh, you copied Richard Corbin. No, I didn't. But I did use his palette sensibilities. I used his line sensibilities in order to make the very rich colors that I was working with work in a comic book format. And I also used a lot of his use of deep shadows because I could do that with the medium that I was playing with. It's something that I would never do with my traditional art because my traditional art has other influences. But it was something that allowed me to find my visual style within the realms of the comic I was working on. So this is what I mean when I say if you're going to steal, steal from the best. There's little things that I do. Johnny Reb, the top of every page, has a 4-panel news or talk show thing. I stole that from Frank Miller because he used it in The Dark Knight Returns, and he did it to great effect by interspersing the story with these different shots of news programs and in doing so gave a vermicitude to the story that was new, and I liked it. And I didn't copy what he did, but I used that as the inspiration to do my own version of it. But I freely acknowledge that that's where I got it from. So when I say when you're going to steal from the best, I am not talking about plagiarism. I am talking about inspiration. I'm not even talking about homage. I am talking about inspiration. I'm talking about recognizing where your inspiration comes from, acknowledging it, and making it something that's yours. I'm going to go ahead and call this one short at this point. I think I've covered everything I want to cover. Let me double check. Yes, I've covered everything that I wanted to cover. So what I'd like you to do is leave any comments. If you think that there's a place that would benefit from this, go ahead and share it. Please like, please subscribe. We need to get our subscriber count up. And thank you very much for tuning in. We're going to talk again.